It was just like, good morning, everybody. Melissa and I are we're, we're lamenting about the weather in our respective locations because it's quite chilly this morning here in northern Vermont and in Georgetown, Massachusetts.
Yeah,
So we're kind of wondering, we think spring is drunk and disorderly and is just, not doing what it needs to do. It
I'm
needs,
like manifesting spring here. I got the
right?
short
It's like,
sleeve.
let's
I'm
go,
like,
the
I'm just
pastel
gonna,
colors and the flowers.
yeah,
Let's go.
I'm just gonna put it on, even though I'm freezing. I got my slippers on. I'm like shivering.
Right? I was gonna open the window and then I looked at the temperature and it's 38 degrees. I was like, oh, that might be a little overzealous. Like, let's not do that. Okay. Oh my goodness. All right. So we're back with Melissa Gilbo, founder and CEO and chief everything at Women's Business League, which is a national business women's organization. You can join an online virtual chapter where I am, or you can join a actual chapter in Massachusetts, North Carolina, Florida. You have chapters. New Hampshire, you have chapters. Any place else I missed?
Yeah, pretty much all the way down the East Coast.
Georgia. I know you're trying to get
Yeah,
into Georgia. You're
yep,
getting your way in there. Okay.
Maine.
Maine. Yep. Okay. So not Vermont yet.
Not
Yet.
yet.
That might be a job for Noelle in the future. We'll
I would
see.
love that. Oh,
Yeah. So here we are, and we've been reading. If you're connected with me on LinkedIn, you would have seen that I was harping on the global workplace report from Gallup that I looked at. I spent some time with earlier this week because it fits right into what Melissa and I are always talking about. So Melissa and I get together once a month on the show. We talk about communication, connection, and I think two things that go along with that too are courage and care. And
mm,
Melissa doesn't know this yet, but I have a book in my mind for her and I to do. And so I'm going to be talking to her about that later. Like, she doesn't have enough things to do. So we are really, we're really interested in showcasing the fact that communication and connection are paramount. Melissa says connection is the new currency, and I agree with her. And we were together last Friday in New Hampshire, and she spoke at my annual client appreciation conference lunch, and she talked about that a lot. So we looked at this report, and we saw that 80% of the global workforce is disengaged, which is crazy to us.
easy.
That means 80% of the people that were surveyed that are working in companies go to work and they feel disengaged from their employer, from their management, and from their work. And also, what's in that report is management feels disengaged to a high degree, which isn't a surprise, right? Because if management is disengaged and they're managing from a disengaged state, then of course no one is going to want to engage with them. So, given that, we also discovered that they monitor people's well-being, like life situation they call it, and we saw that, like, between struggling and suffering, it's like I think 56 or 59, 59 or 56% of people are either struggling or flat out suffering. So that concerns us because we are people, and we are, yeah. So we're going to just talk a little bit about this morning, how does communication and connection, how does that fit in? Like, how do we see that fitting into disengaged people and therefore workplaces and also management?
Mhm.
And I'm going to hand this over to Melissa in 1 second, but I do think from a leadership perspective and having trained leadership and all the things over the years for quite some time, I do believe that, if I do believe we have a lot of managers being put in positions that they are just not educated for. So it's not necessarily that they're bad managers or leaders. It's just that they are not equipped, right? They haven't been educated. They haven't been shown the way to lead or the way to do things. So I'm going to hand this over to Melissa and say, what are you seeing? She sees a lot more humans in person than I do because I'm way up here in Vermont with the cows. And so I'm wondering, as you're talking and as you're having your professional things, like what do you see? Like, what are people saying about how they feel at work, and what are you seeing out there?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me back on the show. I absolutely love being here. I love being with you. I love these conversations. So I am seeing this, and it's so shocking, and it's heartbreaking. Like I can't even imagine going to work and not loving it. you know.
Right,
So I do see, and I am hearing that there is that disengagement, and it's that human to human. And as I said in my talk last week, Noelle, is that I feel like connection is being replaced with clicks,
right,
like the clicks of the computer, the clicks of the phone. So what I'm really hearing is that people are craving that belonging, right?
right,
It's the belonging to something that they are so proud of and want to show up and give their best. And that belonging stems from relationships, and that
right,
stems from connections, and that stems from community. So it's those four big words that you hear me talk about all the time: connection, community, belonging. They matter. They're no longer a soft skill,
right.
right? So I think these companies, we need to get back to the how are you today?
Right. The conversations that happen over I know what I saw. I saw somebody talk
Yes,
about the conversations that happen over the water cooler. And
that's
like,
right.
those are the things that raise people's, happiness level and satisfaction level, like during the day,
Yep.
just running into someone and, like you said, saying good morning, checking on them, see what's going on. That's that connection piece, right? That's like,
Right.
I belong to something bigger than myself. So, okay, so here's the challenge question for people, right? Like, for those people that, for whatever reason, are not in places where humans are in person, like, how do we cultivate that type of connection over a virtual, reality? Obviously, Zooms is a big deal, and getting together in person when you can,
Yep.
but I think, like, also for, if you have a team or whatever, like, to have
Yeah.
some kind of open communication, right? Like a Slack or a Telegram, or like something where people can drop voice notes to each other and talk to, like, because we have to come up with like I feel like we have to come up with a whole new system for the people that are just not, maybe their job is remote, and maybe they're like, maybe they live in New York and they're working in California, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of that going on
Yeah. So
because of
I
the pandemic.
For
So
sure, for sure. And way back, we didn't have all this technology. There
right,
was no Zoom, right? So we're learning, like we're relearning how to manage and lead and work in the workplace. So yeah, a lot of us are remote and we can do this work from home. So right then and there, we feel a little bit disconnected, isolated, right? But
yeah,
like you said, as a manager, as a leader, that is your responsibility to bring your team in and to care for them and
right,
to see them. They want to feel seen, heard, and a part of something, because
right,
that's where loyalty happens, right?
right.
So,
They want to feel psychologically safe,
and
which
they
is
want
all
to,
the things that you just said.
yeah, and they want to feel invested, right? So,
Yeah,
for me, my team, I'll give you an example. My team, we meet once a week, and it is remote, right? Because I have
right,
team members in North Carolina and all over the place. But it's my responsibility, my job as a leader, to bring them together and to have that camaraderie.
yeah,
Uh, so every single one of my meetings, we always open with a little bit of chatter and like, tell me like, how was your weekend? What did you do? What are the kids up to? And we all connect on a human level because we care about one another, right? We
right,
want to know what's going on in their life and be there to say, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool," and "How can I help you?" and all those things. And it's not a waste of time. Never.
Right.
And I think that should be a part of that culture, right? You're creating culture, which creates the belonging, which
Yep.
creates the community, and you get the loyalty and the care. Like all of it comes together with one simple mind shift framework,
Right.
right? And it's
Right.
asking them, it's pulling your team in. Like, what do you think about this initiative? What are your thoughts?
Right. Giving
Um,
them a chance to speak, a seat at the table. They want
yes,
to be, like you said, they want to be seen and heard and feel, collaborated with.
yes,
One of the things that I am a certified like five behaviors of a team, so I can give those the five dysfunctions of a team. I'm a facilitator for that, like bed and body of work. But one of the things we talk about in there is like often when a team is dysfunctional, it's because, they don't have that level of feeling like everyone on the team gets a voice. And it doesn't, when you're the owner or the leader of the managers or of the folks or of the team, it's like there's a way to give people a voice and go back and forth with them in a dialogue. And even if you choose the way that they didn't want, like there's a way to get buy-in from
yes,
them, and because as long as they feel seen and heard and like, they had something to say about, like they got to put in their feedback, right? And you listened as the
right.
leader, as the owner, that you actually heard it, then they can get on board. Like that's one of the orchestrations when you facilitate that work. It's like teaching the leaders how to collaborate with everyone, let them feel seen and heard, and then get them on board.
That's
And
right.
then when the team goes out to the world, it's unified. In here, and Brene Brown calls this the rumble, right? In here, we can disagree, have dialogue, all the things. However, when we face as the company, the world, we are unified, and we do not bring our dirty laundry like out to the world or to each other in the absence of a rumble or a feedback loop or whatever the company wants to call their, when they sit everyone down and have these dialogues, collaborations, and discussions. One of the things I wanted to say though is I know for a fact, and when I was the CEO of a recruiting company, I did this as well. You send gifts to your team and cards and all the things, and I have heard from your team members that that's one of the things that they love most about you is they feel cared for and taken care of even though you're not present in the room with them.
Right.
And that we had a complete virtual and remote team with the recruiting company. And I did that too. I sent like turkeys for Thanksgiving to everybody, and you would do different things. And my son is actually speaking to someone across the country that he was introduced to, and they are, kind of in the beginning stages of relating. And the other night, he was at work and he didn't have dinner, and she sent him a DoorDash. That
Yeah.
at the gym, a knock came on the door, and here came like $75 worth of a beautiful dinner. And I just thought, that was magnificent, and I actually asked, I don't know her, but I actually asked him to thank her on behalf of John and I, because, as parents, that like it's such a weird world right now with people meeting people in all different kinds of ways. But that showed me that this person understands, the value of like showing up for someone even when you're not in the same state, or or maybe even in the same country, right? Like because we interact with people all over the world now, and it's really a global environment.
Yeah.
So I feel like, kind of to point to what you said, um okay, so we know the old ways of good, handshakes, thank you notes, all the things that you and I tell people over and over again, right? And then I almost feel like we have to give everyone like a new framework, right, for what that kind of care looks like in the digital age, because it looks a little different. Where I might invite you for coffee, maybe I invite you for coffee Zoom, and then for me, like once every month or every 6 weeks, I'm going to drive down. I'm actually driving down to Maine to have lunch with Melissa in a few weeks.
I
Uh,
know.
so it's like you have to reconstruct yourself on how you would normally do it. And you have to find like a new way to do it, right? How do you keep so you have a virtual chapter. How do you keep them engaged? Like just as just
Yeah,
as
we
a,
do. Before I get there, I want to read this statement that I saw, and it like really hit hard because
okay,
it's what we're talking about. So people don't disengage from companies, they disengage from people.
right,
Like,
exactly. And they disengage from leaders, managers. Yeah, for sure.
so, I mean, that really hit hard. And I was like, wow, that is such a true statement. So if we just keep that one in the back of our minds, it's powerful. But like I said, we've grown through technology. And like you were saying, we have to redefine what that looks like,
Right,
in a digital era. So for us, bringing community, bringing people together, having belonging virtually is looks like giving everybody a chance to speak. Everybody at the table has the opportunity to share and belong and participate.
right.
Um, I think the participation is huge, but the commitment is to show up. I feel like a lot of people aren't truly showing up. Like when you show up to work, you have to show up fully to be fully engaged, participate in all the things. So as I said in the beginning, the onus is on the leader or the manager, but
Yeah,
there's also ownership on the employee, the
right.
one the one that needs to be the one participating, engaging fully in work. And a
Like you
lot of
said,
that,
showing up like a thousand
yeah,
percent, right? Because it's really easy to sit at your desk and be pissed that no one's talking to you.
that's
But
right.
like, whose fault is that,
That's
right?
right.
Whose fault is that? I mean,
So it's
I could be up here in Vermont and be upset that I don't see anyone, but like, well, depending on where you are in Massachusetts, it's a 3.5 to 6 hour drive up here.
yeah.
So, it's not like people are going to haul up here. Maybe they'll come once a year if I have an event, which I'm thinking about. But, other than that, I am the one and all of you are down there. So I could sit here and be sad, or I could John and I can get in the car and I can find ways to go down there and make it, worth the trip for me, right? Like schedule a bunch of stuff and see a bunch of you and all the things, right?
Right.
That's on me. That's my
So it's the
responsibility.
two-way, right? It's
Yeah.
the employee and the employer, right?
Yeah.
There's a two-way responsibility on both sides. And I think we are lacking some of that on the employee side as well, you
Yeah.
know? Um and again, it goes back to loyalty. Like I'm aging myself. So I grew up before the internet, which I said at the talk.
Me
Um,
too.
right? So
We didn't even have a computer when I was
yeah.
little. We didn't even know what that was.
But back then, like when I saw my aunts and uncles, my grandparents, my mom and dad, like there was loyalty in their companies. So for instance, like GE,
Yes.
when you joined GE, you were there for a lifetime. That became your career, and there was
Yep.
so much loyalty there that you would never think to leave.
Right.
So I thought that was really interesting, and I wanted to unpack that a little bit. Like, what made those folks say, I'm never going to leave
Right.
this
Well, I mean, John, who's on here, my husband, he was
job?
at FedEx for 33 years,
Same thing.
so same thing there. And pretty much everyone he knows that he worked with has that longevity to their career, whether they're still there or whether they already retired like he did.
And my husband,
Um,
same thing. He works for Verizon and he landed this job right out of the military. He went from high school to the military for 4 years,
yeah.
right to Verizon, and he's still there. He's retiring from Verizon, his one job. One job.
Yeah. My
You
dad
know,
was the same way, WR Grace for like 40 years in Lexington.
So
Um,
what makes them so like
I think it's a couple things because John and I were talking about this the other day because I was so I was like lit up about this report. I was stomping around the house. um, and John was loyal to FedEx, a very loyal employee to FedEx. But we were talking about leadership and how sometimes leaders get into roles and they're not equipped, they're not trained properly, like to lead, and they're a little bit like disengaged because they're way up there and they forget to like collaborate and integrate with people on the ground. And
yeah,
he was saying that he was saying like, yeah, when da 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 and da 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 da, and we always felt like they were separate from us and that they didn't really care about us. So not his managers like on the ground, but like that higher echelon of leadership. So I think companies like Spanx, she does a great job
yeah,
or she did, before she sold her company, did a great job of making sure that she knew and felt everyone that was at the ground level all the way up, and she had loyal folks and she treated them all really well
that's
when when she sold. Jamie Lee, Kern Lima, same thing, with her cosmetics company, and there's other examples, I'm sure. I think to answer your question, I think the older way back there, first of all, entrepreneurialism wasn't like as I feel like
it
mainstream
wasn't.
as it is now. So
Yeah,
I think sometimes even people that might have not been happy, they were too scared, like they didn't know what else could be done, right? So they were
true,
too scared to
true.
do anything else because that was a bit, you were taught, you go to a job, you get health insurance, you get a 401k, you get a pension, you do your, you
And then
serve your time, and then you leave. Um, so it's just, I think we have a completely different reality, right, than we did back then. And
yeah,
so, what our parents, my mom was an entrepreneur. She was a maverick. She was like, before that was a cool thing to do. And we were always like just making it by the seat of our pants. But she, stepped out on the work she believed in, right? She worked
right.
for Boys Clubs of Boston for a long time. And then at 36, she stepped out, to just be a maverick and teach prosperity and be a coach, and all before that was even something cool to do. Um, so yeah, and John saying when you see your parents work that hard and work like that, you get that it's kind of instilled in your genes, like you're supposed to go to school, do this, stay at a job, and all the things. I
Right.
think now, I think if you have a good company, like I know some of the people that work for you, and they can't say enough good things about you. And to me, that speaks to that speaks more to who you are than almost anything I could figure out on my own, right? Which I think the world of you already. But it's nice to know that you know how to run your company, right?
Right.
And that people are raving about you. That's a wonderful thing. That tells me that you're going to go far and you're going to build, an extremely sound company. I think a lot of the problem right now is we have managers being put in positions that they're not ready for with no leadership training. And that's a problem
That's a
because
problem.
I think that is at the root of this thing that we're seeing, this big disengagement problem.
So is I don't know, we're just unpacking this together, right? This is why
Yeah, absolutely.
conversations is is that the root of the problem is training? I mean, have we gotten so far away? Because I know when I worked for GE, right out of the gate for the insurance world, they had their own branch for insurance,
Yeah.
and training was critical. I mean, we didn't do anything unless we were taught and trained and ready. Licensing, all of that was so important to their culture. I mean, they even came out with the Six Sigma, the black belt, yellow belts, the white. It was engraved in our culture to be trained, and they took the time to do that. So, have we gotten away from that?
I think in newer company, I think GE does a great job. I think Disney is like
Disney.
stellar. I have actually paid to do
Yes.
Disney educational certificates,
Ooh.
and which were just really cool. Like I was just curious, and before I did all the Harvard certificates and stuff like that, I did a bunch of Disney stuff. And it was just it was great to kind of get into there. I know Marriott does an exceptional job.
Okay.
So I think some of these companies that have been around a long time, like they have mastered that. I think some of the difficulty is newer companies, like I'm not sure that they understand like the value of training. And sometimes an entrepreneurial company starts so fast
So, yeah,
that it's just not, that's sometimes why a lot of people will bring me in. They've gotten to like $1 million and they just can't figure out how to scale. And when I say like, well, what are the job descriptions, the deliverables, what's our metric measurement? They have none of that. It's like, I told them what they needed to do, but they're not doing that. So it's like, okay, so first we have like what the job is supposed to be, and then what the employee is actually doing, and then what the owner actually thinks they should be doing. So we like have to put all that, unpack all that, and make
yeah,
that, you know. And I've spoken to a couple of people that we know that have taken 6-figure jobs, and when they get in there, at like a startup or a new company, they're just like the metrics are changing all the time. So I think if you don't have, even if you train somebody well, if you let them out of that training and you don't have good metrics and
right.
measurable deliverables that are being monitored really on a weekly basis, because honestly, if you own a company, why would you want to let it go longer than a week if someone's not hitting the metric or not understanding how to hit the metric, right? Because then they're going to fail, and then they're going to feel bad about themselves, and then they're going to disengage, right? Because
Age, yeah,
they feel bad.
yeah,
So I just think, Peter Drucker had it right about, if you can't manage it if you can't measure it.
that's
And I think we've gotten away from a lot of that just based on a lot of the things that I see in those smaller, several $1 million, $10 million, $5 million, $30 million. Like there's a lot of unclarity, right, in roles, SOPs. Sometimes a company will come to me and want to get prepared for a sale, and
yeah,
so like eventually they'll want to maybe take on an private equity or sell out. And there's a lot of cleaning up that has to be done, right? Because if think about it, if I'm private equity and I buy a company, I want to know that that company can run if you pull out ownership,
that's right.
right? So if everything lives in the owner's head, how the hell are we going to know what to do? And that happens a lot. So I think in answer to your question, like, have we gotten so far away from training in big established companies? No, probably not. In the other types of companies, I think it's a mix of lack of training. I think our younger generations lack soft skills in general.
Yeah,
So I think as leaders, we almost have to parent in a lot of ways, like in a healthy way, but we have to teach people how to properly communicate and engage with one another because they just don't know. They're used to this, and people text instead of call. Like what, and people that are millennial, like people that are younger than us, they're offended if you call them. They want you to text them.
right.
They do not pick up the phone. And it's like, what? Just text me. It's like, what is that? How you and I grew up. Like, what is that?
No, I know.
So it's, we have a whole different world. And if leadership isn't people like you and I, right, that we don't have our head in the sand, we're paying attention,
Right,
right? And so if you're not paying attention, it's not going to go well.
and I think it comes back to what you started the show with, the care. Like, I care so much about my team, so much,
Right.
and I want them to succeed. Like, I
Right.
want that for them. I want to teach them everything. I want them to grow every, like, so it comes from that place of care. And that's where people feel seen and valued and heard. And they're not just being like talked to and transactions. Like, I don't know. This is such a heavy conversation. It's so critical because that
Right.
80% number, my goodness,
Right.
is it gonna be 100%? Like, What's going to happen when it hits 100%?
And when I know we're coming up
I
on
know.
our half hour here, this is probably a conversation for us to keep continuing. I'd be interested, anybody who's watching, if you have feedback
Yeah.
for Melissa and I, or you want to share your experiences of how it is at work for you, because, Melissa and I both feel called, like this is a problem that we want to help to solve. We're not sure how that happens. Obviously in our lives, we're teaching people these things, but I feel like there's more work to do. Beth says,
Yeah.
definitely. My experience is that employees and managers alike are thrown into a role, and you're expected to teach yourself, and then you're expected to teach yourself, and then trained later at the same time as being okay. So you're being held to productivity metrics without being trained properly. And she says it feels like companies care more about the bottom line
Yeah. Then
than the
the person.
people. And
Yeah.
that's true, a
That is
1000% for sure. And that makes you automatically disengaged,
automatic.
when you don't feel like the people that you work for care about you. And then, I mean, this really, I know we got to end, but like this really backs up to the mental health issues that are rampant and the depression, like all the things, right? Because if 80% of the people feel disengaged, it's no one, it doesn't, it totally is understandable why 60 something percent of people are suffering and struggling. Like, yeah, this is like you said, a heavy conversation and a bigger conversation.
Yeah.
But it's just, so Melissa and I are basically, we're opening the can on this. And if you listen to the whole show later on today or later this week or whatever, we'd love to, hear what you think about that. You can email me and I'll send it to her, and we'll continue this conversation next month. But we are concerned. We are concerned that so many of you feel disengaged at work. And maybe we can try to give you some tools so that, you can make a breakthrough there. One of the things that we would say to you, I'll give you something and then Melissa will give you something. I would say, if you are at work and you are feeling disengaged, what you definitely can do is try to create relationship with the people around you.
Yeah.
And you can definitely try to create some kind of relationship with your manager, and you know and or you can get some good coaching and career counseling. And if it's not the right position for you, I would highly encourage you to explore other options, because you definitely do not want to wake up every day dreading going to your job.
No, no. Um, I think the other thing is that when you pull people in as a human, nothing can replace that at all. So those little check-ins, like you were saying earlier, Noelle, like for my team, I love sending them little notes of gratitude, or like, and it doesn't have to always be monetary. It could be something as simple as, I see you did an incredible job with
Yep.
that client the other day. I just want to say thank you for
Yep.
doing that. So it's just those little moments that matter. We become so busy and so distracted. Those little moments matter so much. And if you could just leave this show with one thing today, little moments like your homework today, little moments like this coming week, do something little for somebody. And it's not going to be little as received, right? It's going to
Right.
be a big moment to them.
Right.
So if
And
we
you
could,
never know when one of those little moments is going to change somebody's life,
that's right.
and you may never know. Your note, or you're pulling someone aside, like Melissa's saying, and saying thank you, or I see you and I appreciate your effort, or whatever, like that could change somebody's life. You don't know.
It really,
So just, get outside your own little, everybody's living in here. Like, come on, you guys, you got to do better. The world is like suffering, and we have
yeah,
to do something about it. So, all right, Melissa gave you your homework. Do
I
your
did.
homework, and I will see you guys next week. And when Melissa and I have lunch together, we'll shoot a quick live, and we'll say hello when we're actually sitting at the same table. So that will be on May 21st in the afternoon. So keep watch for that.
I can't wait.
All
Woohoo. Yeah.
right. See you guys. Have a great weekend.
Bye.